Okay, this is going to be a video about merchant electricity prices, and it's just going to be an explanation of the page on my website that discusses, I'm making it a little smaller so we can see it, merchant prices around the world. Now, what I have done is I've gone and got prices from Turkey. I've gone and got prices from all over the US, and I've gone all the way back to 1996 in some cases, 2001 in other cases, and compared the price to gas prices, natural gas prices. And I've adjusted for regions, and I've used all these techniques to automatically upload the data. And then I got, which I've discussed earlier, the Philippines electricity prices. Now I've fixed some stuff on the German electricity prices, which kind of sucks. It just has I can only really get quarterly prices. I did a whole bunch of work on the UK electricity prices. For Australia, I got hour by hour prices and came up with I just used a technique where you could read separate files in, and I put all the hourly prices in a big database. For Nord Pool, which has a nice kind of website, I just downloaded all the prices and put them together. And I've done the same for Korea. I'm not quite finished with all of the world, but that's where I am. Now, some man or woman is, I post a video, and within, I don't know, a very short time, he gives me a little dislike, or she, or whoever. And if you dislike the videos, I'm so interested in your comments. That's how I learn, from negative comments. But a little dislike from somebody without any explanation is kind of just bullying. And it's just a reflection of the world. And it just makes me not even want to do this crap anymore. But I'm going to. I'm not giving up. Okay? Now, I'm going to start with the prices in the US and the UK. And there are some really, really interesting studies and some really interesting analysis. And if you don't want to watch this, don't turn it off. Obviously, if you're not interested in merchant prices, you won't watch it. Why should you? And I'm not going to have all that much new in Excel on some of this. There are some interesting ways to read the data, some interesting ways to kind of consolidate data a little bit and everything else. I think I'm going to start with, this is from the Google Drive or the directories. And I'm going to start with UK prices, I think. And, you know, to put these together, I had to put hour by hour prices, and I've moaned a lot on the website about the lack of transparency in prices, which is a gigantic reason you do prices, so people won't be corrupt in assigning PPA prices, so you can see what the true price of electricity is. If you don't publish it, what a waste. I went to this APX website, and they said I had to be a company, and they said I had to pay for the data. How absurd! How absurd! Now, so what I've done is got all sorts of historic data for the UK. Now, I had to do a lot of work and a lot of verification, and I'm not going through all of that. What I'm doing right now is just going to show you some of the detailed data. So our total database, and one of the hardest thing was just counting. Sometimes they had half hour by half hour. I tried to go all the way from 1990 all the way to 2018. I put little breaks here for each price, and I used some conditional formatting to get all the prices right. Now, when you finally do this, here is some of the interesting thing. Just around 2000 and well, it was right here. We had this big kind of margin. This is the gas price versus the electricity price. This is simple annual. And you know, the absolute level of prices is never really the issue. The price is the price of electricity relative to your fuel price. The absolute price, of course, is very, very interesting for valuation of a solar or nuclear plant or something. But the relative price for a gas or coal plant or something is the key price. Now they put all these gas plants in, and you can kind of see it coming down. Now on a monthly basis, it gets even more interesting. Number one, and I don't know if I have much to say here. This is just a whole bunch of sum if uh, uh, functions, and I realized as I was doing this, I should tell you, that this wonderful technique I sometimes use with clicking on the whole row or column can actually slow things down. I have to admit that. And here's the real story, is when you take the electricity price and divide it by the natural gas price, and the natural gas price, came from I just took it from the World Bank pink data, then you get these really low heat rates. And you can see what's really happening is right here around the year 2000 when the heat rates plummeted, and they've never ever come back. And that's why this little diagram and this little diagram really tells you the whole story. Now you can look at the daily prices as well, and you can see kind of spikes. And I didn't have the same granularity in some of the data, but you can see that not only did the price spikes come down, but they stabilized. Now, then we can get different hourly prices, and I just use a match index to kind of give you a kind of pattern of what's happened in the prices, and you can kind of look at what happened to the prices way back, kind of before the big surplus capacity. And I'm not sure I picked a good one here, but that sounds pretty good. That was too early. When I had the hourly prices, you can kind of start to see spikes in here. We can try to understand what happened to all these funny prices, but when you kind of get to the post spike, post overbuild era, the prices flattened out a whole lot as well. Now to get all of this and to update this, all you have to do is, this is where you get the electricity prices, but you get these prices from Nord Pool now. And in Nord Pool, the nice thing about this is they provide all of the hourly data, and I verified that this hourly data was correct. So that's UK. All right, now let's move to US. So and now all of these files are on the website. And it's nothing all that magic. If, please, the guy who's giving me these stupid little dislikes, don't watch this videos or tell me what you don't like. So silly, I'm pissed. I'm sorry. Then now the U.S. one. They have now. You can go to these websites, these independent system operator websites, and get all the detail. Okay, so I do some of that, but the primary thing I want to show you on this one, the primary thing really is how to, and this one is truly automated. Okay, the UK one I might have to, oh great, just a minute. Now there's this file called current EIA, Energy Information Agency format and database. And this one, what you to really get everything ready, that's where all the data is going to be. Now, you go up one directory, and you go to the natural gas. Now, before I get for every single market, for every single thing, there's kind of a philosophy. All the history is there. All the history is there. You have to find some comparable and relevant gas prices. You have to get it in the relevant currency. I compared everything to USD, so we can kind of see where the UK absolute prices are, and more important, the heat rates are. And then you get natural gas prices. Now, if you go, I have a file here that just says retrieve US gas prices. And I've tested this one out. Well, I tested them all out. Okay. And the idea here is to make the updating of the history independent from the history and as simple as possible. So step one is to get all of the gas prices. Now EIA has this nice little graph where they compare show you where the gas hub and electricity hub is, so you can correlate all the electricity with natural gas prices. And then, excuse me, okay, I have a little thing that just says get the current prices. Update the current hub prices right here. You just click on this one, okay, and then it goes and reads the file. And then it goes to the EIA website and it just reads the latest. So right now, I'm in April, after April 1st, okay? And it read the last file and it just throws that into a file and then it puts all the history together. Now to put all the history together, there is a little kind of thing. I use a whole bunch of match index things, match index and indirect, and you can look at all those. Okay, you could do this with Power Pivot and a pivot table as well, but it gets the various regions, and some of the really interesting region is here, the California, where I show the Henry Hub price and then the spread, and look at how enormously high this spread was, and there was a big accusation of market power there. Now once you have this one and you've updated it, you just copy and paste. I have to do it a little manually. You copy and paste all of the gas prices here, and I'm closing this file. I'm not even going to save it. And then you go back to the electricity prices, and you paste the gas prices into the electricity prices, because you need this reference gas price to really see how it's working now. This is taking a tiny bit too long, but I'm going to finish. So I'm going to show you again. It's all almost the same techniques. This is a really large file. It's 22 megabytes. But the good news is it has all this data, and it has a whole lot of subtle but interesting stories you can tell. Okay, and there's some of the stories that can be told. As soon as this file opens, I'll tell you some of them. And here again are the prices. You do exactly the same thing. You read the current price right here. I'm in 2017. When you're in 2018, there'll be a couple of things to adjust. I'll put that on the website anyway. And then you get all this history. Now, this history here, this has 228,000 lines. And these are daily prices. They're not they're not hourly prices. So there's a whole lot of daily data, daily peak data. This is where you'd paste the gas price sheet in, and then this is the key sheet. You take it just says take one of the region names. In this case, I'll take this place called Indiana, the Indiana hub price, okay? And it goes back, and all of these little techniques, which were very painful to do, but I'm not going to waste your time on all the little database techniques with match index indirect, but all they do is go back and find the oldest date, and then they skip to the different files, and for each file you find a date with match and index, and then you retrieve all the price. Oops, well, that doesn't matter, that last one. That was just because I went further than I had to. And then you match the price with the gas price, and then I do it for a second region. This is so this time it has the PJM region. Okay, and then we can just graph first the electricity versus gas price, and on a daily basis, sometimes you might not quite see the correlation between electricity and gas prices. Just a second, I think yeah. Oh, you don't see it. And I made it all flexible with all these offset dynamic range names that I discussed in another video, and I'm not going to repeat myself. You can go and look at the offset. I think it works a lot better than the NA technique. And so this is what happened in NEPOOL. And then you can get the implied heat rate. Now this is really what I was trying to study a lot more. And it's a little tricky because, first of all, you've got to understand these are on-peak heat rates. I'm just going to put two NEPOOLs. I put them together. And it doesn't look like much. It doesn't look like all that much. So I'm going to go all the way back as far as I can. And then there were some high heat rates, and I put a little thing here so you can adjust the scale. But what's really interesting is how the volatility of the heat rates has gone down. That's really the key. And the level has gone down, and this level is right around somewhere, and these are on peak, not total. The on peak heat rates, sometimes they're a little high, but the on peak heat rates are about 8,000. This is the heat rate in MMBTU per megawatt hour. MMBTU, not BTU per kilowatt hour. And then we can look at the daily prices and compare daily prices. Now, another interesting thing is what's happened in kind of California. I'm going to put the Northern California thing here. Now, the first thing is there's the California crisis. And I better put a higher scale. That was enormous. And really, if you look at all these prices around the whole U.S., they don't change very much. I have to, it's taken a little while to get the scale up. And if I'm comparing it with NEPOOL, there was no corresponding enormous crisis anywhere else in the country. It only happened, and the rest of the prices are all the same. I think it doesn't sound like it's very interesting, but it's really kind of amazing. I'm comparing it with PJM. Wasn't able to go back. I'll compare it with Indiana. Indiana had some really big price spikes, and this caused an enormous investment in peaking plants. And as soon as everybody invested in these merchant peaking plants, the prices went down, and nothing was made, or people made a silly kind of adjustment. That's some history. Now let's compare the Northern Illinois and California price. Sorry, the Northern California price with this thing called the Mid-Con price, which is like Montana or someplace like that, where there are very few people, but there's more renewable energy, and you don't see it here in this one, but you started to see a divergence between, I guess I must have had a little problem here with some of the data, but between, it was kind of matching, and then you start to see a transmission issue. And a lot of times you can only see this data with monthly. And this is the same thing with the monthly comparison. You can kind of see it similar and then start to see a divergence. Now, you might not think this is big, but this is kind of 55 or 57 versus 40. This is a big difference. That's transmission and renewable energy from the renewable energy. This is just the month by month electricity and gas price, and you can look at all these regions, and the interesting thing is, well, some of them aren't quite as correlated as others, but there's always this really high correlation. And look at, this is New England, look at the correlation between gas and electric prices. You know, if we go earlier, and a lot of times you can see more things in monthly data, you had some kind of positive numbers here, and then it just followed it exactly, and that's when the overbuilding kind of occurred. Okay, and then we have the heat rates. Okay, again, this shows you, I need to perhaps, let's see if we can really isolate on some of these things. And I did a little example, so this is the NEPOOL heat rate. that sometimes went to 10 and recently, but look at all these ones around when the price really started to crash. 2001, we still had some positives. Then everybody came in, and the heat rates just fell flat. And at 8,000, a heat rate is about what a marginal heat rate on a planet is. Finally, it's going up. But it took many years and no volatility. Okay, and then you can look at the daily prices. So that's just a little bit of lesson on this. Now, I hope you're not watching this video if you don't care about merchant prices. But that's what I've tried to do, is put together these prices in all sorts of different markets. And I'm going to make another video. I'm sorry if this man is going to get all mad at me about that.